good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Wigtown Book Festival's breakfast book show with us, the Bookshop Band. My name's Ben, and this is Beth.
Yeah, you got it right.
Oh, for once. Oh, I actually got an extra hour's sleep last night, so that's why. And we're joined this morning by two/hopefully three very wonderful guests. So we have Colin Tennant, who has been slaving away on all the films for the Wigtown Book Festival this year, coming to us from his darkened editing suite in Wigtown, I believe. Morning, Colin. And then we also have Nicola White, who is a wonderful author, and we'll find out all about your latest book. And you're coming to us from up in the Black Isles, is that right?
Yeah, Cromarty in the Black Isle. Good morning.
Lovely. Well, morning. Well, thank you for joining us. So we will open with a song, and to explain the tenuous relevance of the song to our first guest, I hand over to Beth.
Well, I think we will be talking a little bit about water, and we thought this song would be quite a good one. It's inspired by Philip Pullman's The Book of Dust, the first book of that being La Belle Sauvage, and the song is called Room for Three, and it's kind of about a boat and how this character Malcolm can take these two passengers into his boat when the waters start to rise. And so we'll just play the song. Oh yeah, I'll just take my headphones off too.
And I don't
That's beautiful. Absolutely
Thank
beautiful.
you very much. Thank you. So before we go on to start with Colin this morning, I'm just going to bring in Polly into the show. Hi, Polly. Morning.
Hello. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And what a wonderful booky background you have. You've shown us all up there.
Well, I was told by Sandy I had to rearrange what I had. It was a bit muddly, so I've had to move around, but it's quite funny.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. We're just going to start off with Colin with our watery song. So, Colin, I believe you have an exhibition as part of the Wigtown Book Festival online about looking at the sea and particularly around here and people who work on it and in it and under it.
Yes, I do. First of all, that was a really beautiful song. I was sort of like, I felt like I was going to nod off. It was so soothing. But yeah, no, I have an exhibition that's part of the festival this year. So it's an online exhibition called Out of the Blue, and it's a body of work that I made about 3 or 4 years ago, where I documented the commercial seafood industry of Dumfries and Galloway. And I spent about 9 months on the project, and I went out. There's not a huge industry here, but there is a relatively large community of people that of which fishing is their main source of income and their main source of employment. So I went out with scallop fishermen and some creel fishermen who were catching lobster and crab, leaving from places like Kirkcudbright and the Isle of Whithorn, and all along the Solway, really. So the photographs that are part of the exhibition are actually photographs that have never really been exhibited before. The sort of culmination of that project was I had an outdoor exhibition in Kirkcudbright, which was wonderful. We made frames out of old scallop dredges, which was really beautiful. But there was only 12 images, and you know, when you work on a 9-month project, you have thousands of photographs. So it's really lovely to be able to show some of those images that have never been seen before. So that's the project, really.
I suppose you've got an infinite gallery space here, haven't you, in comparison?
Yeah, I think that was one of the exciting things about being able to show the work again, was because it's an online exhibition, I guess it's sort of curated slightly differently, and I had an opportunity to sort of, quite often, I'm sure Polly and Nicola might feel like this with publishers. I'm not a writer, so I don't know, but quite often with your photographs, whoever's commissioned the work or whoever the curator is will maybe have quite a lot of say in what work gets shown. So it's kind of nice to pick some of the images that I really love and to let people see them. And just to revisit the work again as well, because you kind of move on to different projects. So it's nice to be seeing that again and remembering the experiences that I had when making the photographs.
It's brilliant. And where can people actually see the photographs?
So you can, there's a link on the website. If you just log on to the Book Festival website, there's an exhibition tab that if you click on there, there's actually 3 online exhibitions, of which Out of the Blue, my one, features. There's a lovely retrospective of Astrid, who has been the artist in residence in Wigtown before and done numerous projects here, an illustrator who's based in Edinburgh, and another exhibition of a printmaker, a local printmaker called Lisa Hooper, who does some really beautiful works as well. So yeah, I'd recommend checking them out.
It sounds like a fascinating project, because like that, that world out on boats and fishing is almost like, if you're not a fisherman, is quite a hidden world. Like, it's something that happens, you occasionally see the boats in the harbour or the crates on the side, but it's not something I could just do, you don't see in your daily life. And it's sort of fascinating, especially like when bringing up these things from the ocean that you don't expect to be in your waters here? Like, you know, in my head, lobsters are very exotic things that surely only exist in the Bahamas, and clams, you know, all these things that I've noticed in some of the photos that I have had a chance to look at. But coming out from this place, you know, just next to where we are, and that I find that quite surprising. I'm learning when I look at these images as well. Like, was it a totally new thing for you as well to go and see all these places?
Yeah, it definitely was. I've actually never been fishing in my life, you know, recreationally. And I didn't really grow up knowing anyone that was a fisherman. So yeah, it was really eye-opening for me. I think a lot of us have this kind of romantic notion of fishermen bringing their catch into the harbour at the end of each day, and the reality is that it's a very, very tough, physically demanding occupation, and obviously in challenging weather conditions. I mean, I went out on board a ship called the Susan Bird, which is based in Kirkcudbright. It's a scallop trawler, and those guys go out for sort of 3 to 5 days at a time, and they work every hour for that full 3 to 5 days. So their alarm will go off, they'll go on deck, collect what's been caught, bag it up, go back to their cabins, try and get maybe half an hour's sleep, and then the alarm goes off again, and that's constant for like 3-4 days. So it was pretty intense. I was only allowed out for 24 hours because they weren't sure how I would react with the choppy waters. But fortunately, I was okay.
How were you? Good.
I was not bad. Yeah, I was quite proud of myself. Although I did feel horrific for the first hour, but I managed to get over it.
Did you have to follow their sleep patterns, or were you just sort of kind of up?
Well, because I was only there for the first 24 hours, there wasn't a huge amount of sleeping going on because they just kind of work through it. And then I think once you kind of get past that first day, they would then be sleeping almost all the time, and then just getting up for 15-20 minutes of work and then sleeping again. But yeah, it was really interesting and lovely people. And also just fascinating to know how many people actually work in that industry in Dumfries and Galloway, and some of the smaller villages and communities across the Solway. Yeah.
I noticed. Yeah, in Kirkcudbright there's like a sort of a processing place on the riverfront or the estuary front down there. But yeah, what was? Did you come across anything like totally surprising while you were on over this 9 months?
Not necessarily surprising. I guess in Kirkcudbright they have this large processing factory, which I also was fortunate to photograph inside there, and to see the sheer scale of it. And that's a scallop processing factory, and the majority of those scallops go to Central Europe, to various markets there, and to learn about the journey of where those products go was very interesting. And you know, some of the scallops that are caught off the coast of the Solway end up in some wonderful restaurants in and around Central Europe. So that's really interesting to trace that journey. But I think I was quite surprised. You know, the environment and the landscape around the Solway coast is really spectacular. But when you see it from the perspective of being on a boat or a small fishing vessel, then it just gives you a completely different perspective. So that was really enjoyable. You know, usually you're looking out on boats, but to be on one looking back in was, you know, for a photographer, it was very special indeed.
Yeah, and you have had a different perspective of the Solway Firth, because you've been doing some films as well about salt marshes. Which are very much our home, kind of, that's our landscape here, isn't it? Yeah,
I've been very lucky. The festival company asked me to make a series of short films, sort of in collaboration or about the salt marsh of Wigtown, and in particular in collaboration with an author, Stephen Rutt, who I think is maybe coming on your show tomorrow.
He is, yeah. He's going to be chatting to us tomorrow, so that would be really nice.
So the festival commissioned Stephen to write a book which is going to be called The Salt Marsh Library. I don't think he's finished it, or possibly not even began yet. He's still in the researching stage. But I think he was going to be given some tours of the Salt Marsh, which is right on the doorstep here at Wigtown. Obviously, if the festival was going to be a proper physical festival that people could come to, but because that never happened, they asked me to make a series of films which involves him and a local ranger walking on the salt marsh and talking about the ecology and the different bird species and just how amazing the salt marsh is. So yeah, it was a wonderful commission for me. I've got to just be hanging out in the salt marsh for the last 3-4 weeks, flying my drone and just listening to some interesting stories from Stephen and Elizabeth.
Oh, fantastic! And you've also had your drone out for this wild swimming project with Vicky Allen as well, haven't you?
Yeah,
filming some wild swimming.
Yeah, that again, the festival. Again, because everything's online this year, or a lot of it's online, they've asked me to create quite a lot of short films to accompany parts of the programme, and one of those was about wild swimming, and that featured the author Vicky Allen, who has a book, is the co-author of a book, Taking the Plunge, I think it's titled, which is all about wild swimming. So I had a great morning with her where she was swimming in Rig Bay, which is just about 4 or 5 miles from Wigtown, and I'm also making a short film about foraging, which was an event that happened a couple of days ago, which you were on yourself. And that features a local forager, Mark Williams, super knowledgeable, interesting man, and just the delights that you can find along the coastline here in Wigtown.
A very tasty walk.
Yeah, and I think there was a few alcoholic beverages along the way as well, was there not?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, he's very good at making cocktails from the things that he finds around, and they're delicious.
So all these films can be found on the Wigtown Book Festival website. So I encourage everyone to go onto that and see if you can find them. I guess some of them are getting released as the festival goes on. So tune back and catch up as well. But Colin, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Feel free to mute and carry on editing, because I know you've got so much to do, Aura. But yeah. Right, shall we move on to our next guest? I think let's move on to Nicola White, who's joining us from the Black Isles. Good morning, Nicola. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
How are you doing? The weather is horrific here. How is it for you?
It's getting, those clouds are looking blue, they're looking so heavy with rain at the moment. They're all coming in, and the room has gone a little colder. So I think the storm is arriving up here north of Inverness. Yes.
Yeah, we've literally just got our wood delivered, and we put a fire into the house because we thought it'd be very important to actually have a working fire in the house this winter. So, come the
it's a
apocalypse,
very
we can
nice
all go.
feeling, though, when it just kind of goes over the season, that when those things are novel and you're thinking, oh yes, my fire, my mug of coffee, hunkering in.
Cozy cardigan.
Yeah, by February it gets a bit old, but right now I'm quite enjoying it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially with the occasional nice day as well, it kind of allows it. So, Nicola, your latest book, which has come out fairly recently, is that right?
Yeah. Well, my book it's called A Famished Heart. It's the first in a trilogy that I've written, and it actually came out at the end of February. So it was kind of odd because I'm quite a slow writer, so there was about 5 years between my first novel coming out and this one, and I was in a fool's paradise because I was in Dublin. There was all this publicity going on, and the book was in bookshops, and it was hard to believe that sort of just a couple of weeks later things would start to close down, and the festivals I was going to and so on were cancelled one by one. So from thinking here, I'm going out into the world, to kind of going back in again very quickly. And so that's been kind of, I was going to say it's been hard. It's really small in the scale of things and that everyone's going through, but it was quite odd to have all that anticipation and then thinking, oh, you know, I'm not going to be, you know, going from festival to festival and meeting writer pals and so on. I've got to go back again, and you know.
Yeah, it must be very difficult. Like, look, especially when you're writing the book and you're anticipating, like, just it's an opportunity for you to meet your readers or your potential readers, because you know, writing, I guess, is a very, you know, solitary activity, and that kind of reaction from readers must be actually probably quite important. And so to not get that, I can feel that must have been
It's
quite
huge. I mean, especially people who aren't related to you.
Exactly.
Who are not your best
Like
friends,
honest
you know,
people.
Actual legitimate people who you haven't met before is, that's a fantastic part of it, to have conversations around books. Yeah.
Well, Nicola, tell us about your book. Here, I am eager to hear and find out.
Well, my book, A Famished Heart, is set in Dublin in the 1980s, as the whole trilogy is, and it's crime fiction, but it's sort of Gothic, character-led crime fiction. When I was first trying to get the first book published, a lot of publishers were saying, well, it's too literary to be crime, and it's too crimey to be literary, and all that kind of thing of falling between two stools. And it was quite frustrating to, you know, to get a publisher that would kind of stick behind it, the project. And but I found a fantastic publisher now in Viper, who are part of Serpent's Tail, and it's a brand new imprint of some fantastic inventive crime books. So A Famished Heart is part of that. And as I say, it's set in Dublin in 1982, and it opens with a priest knocking on a door of a house where two parishioners are, two sisters who haven't been seen for some time. And he opens the door and finds one of the sisters dead. Very, it turns out she's starved herself to death. I'm sorry for this morning. It's like plunging you into a world of darkness. But there are two sisters, and the other one is found upstairs hiding under the bed. And the letters between the two women show that this was something they intended. They had decided to leave the world. But there are certain anomalies that Vincent Swan, who visits the house, notices, and he comes to be convinced that, in fact, they weren't alone in the house. So that's the start of the book, and the book plays out through the eyes of the detective, Vincent Swan, but also through the people affected by this tragedy, by their sister Francesca, who's actually an actor who's escaped Ireland and has, you know, had a career in America, who's brought back to Ireland. She's on her uppers by this stage, and she's brought back to Ireland to deal with the family tragedy, and also of the priest, Father Timony, who is the one that found the women, and how that event kind of starts to break apart his life also.
Oh, it sounds very intriguing, and yeah. Would you recommend it for a dark winter's night by a fire?
Yeah, I think that would be excellent for that. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
some
it's
candles up and lock the door. Maybe don't have a snack.
Maybe don't have a snack. Well, yeah, it's I mean, I like a book which kind of wraps around me, you know, and that's what I was trying to do with this, to have something that was compelling, but also had some depth too.
And are you from Dublin, Nicola?
Yeah, I am, though I've spent my adult life in Scotland, really. I came over here in my 20s for a job in Glasgow, and I meant to go back, but I didn't. And I think when I came to decide to try and take writing seriously and sit down, I was thinking about where am I drawn to? What has enough kind of obsession for me to stick with it through the time it takes to write about? And I realized that it was the 80s in Ireland. I mean, the 80s in Ireland was a very watershed time, because it was where the forces of sort of conservatism and progression really started to kind of fight it out. There was referendums on divorce and on making abortion doubly illegal, and all these kind of, it was like, actually it feels quite a contemporary time now, because it had not only the referendums, but the culture wars and the identity and the question of what kind of country are we. And so, I mean, that all sounds very academic, but it was that kind of Ireland that I knew really well, but then I left. And I think for those of us who, and there's a lot of us who have left the place we grew up, there's always this kind of phantom limb pain of the life we didn't have, or the place that we didn't stay, and the place that you can never get back to, because of course your home changes. So there's, you know, so
But-
for
but
all
with-
those
but for you,
reasons.
But for you, it kind of remains the same, and it's this thing that probably exists as a part of you, but like you say, you can't revisit it physically because it has changed.
That's right. So it's a place that kind of holds me, and holds me enough that I want to kind of live there imaginatively, and that you know, there's so many aspects of that time, I think, kind of in terms of sort of the morals of the time and the crazy happenings of sort of, it was a time of like moving statues and strange murders and great unemployment, great poverty. You know, you think of the 80s as somehow being about Wall Street or yuppies or Thatcher, you know, but in Scotland and in Ireland, that wasn't the 80s. The 80s were pretty damn bleak. And so there was a lot of things that I wanted to kind of play with there. And the first book that came out at the end of 2014, it was The Rosary Garden, that won the Dundee Book Prize. And this is actually a prequel to The Rosary Garden, just to make it kind of complicated. So this
Interesting.
book, A Famished Heart, is actually the first book in the trilogy. And then The Rosary Garden's being reissued in January by my new publishers. And then there's a third book which will kind of complete that and ends in 1986. So yes, it's a big project.
Did you know that The Famished Heart was going to be a prequel when you sat down to begin it, or did it become obvious as you started it that was how it had to be?
I think I just wrote blindly in this subject of the women who had starved themselves, because that actually links into a true event that happened in Dublin. And as I wrote into it, I suddenly thought, oh no, I didn't expect it to be another Vincent Swan book and to be placed next. You know, it just emerged naturally as being the kind of prequel, as being the way into the Rosary Garden. Yes.
Wow.
And have you used this lockdown time to write, or have you found other
I
things
wish.
to do?
Oh, I'm hoping my editor isn't actually watching this, but I've found it very difficult, and I think that's quite common with writers.
Yeah.
I have managed to read a lot, which has been useful, and to think a lot, but writing has been very slow. I think usually when you start a novel again, you do kind of think, I don't know how I did it last time. I've completely forgotten how to write a book.
Yeah.
But it just seems more extreme in this time, in that, you know, you do find yourself in all kinds of questions about what does it mean to write a book? What does it mean? You know, the 1980s are suddenly history, very distant history towards, you know, now and the things we do now. And I feel stymied. I mean, it is coming along, and I just have to believe that things are suddenly going to move faster. So I scare myself into it.
Yeah, and I think it has been a common thing. We talked to Kate Moss yesterday on our show, and she said exactly the same thing. And she did say she'd read
240
something books over the time.
Wow.
And we were all just like,
supporting the book industry, Kate Moss. Yeah.
But I think for musicians as well, it can go either way. Some people have used it to really, you know, write albums and whatever. But some people, certainly that I spoke to, felt very isolated, haven't had the creative urge to do anything, and have kind of just, you know, done other things to keep themselves busy. So
I think things will move and change and develop, and I think when this certainly with songwriting, we, like when I sit down to write a song, I've no idea how to do it, or it's always a relearning process, and it's always a different process really from song to song.
And we've probably only written stuff because we've had commissions to do things. I think that, I mean, that's a big
like a deadline.
Yeah.
deadline. Yeah, exactly. Deadlines are very good for
Good
that.
old deadlines. But you must do you miss audiences as a part of being, you know, doing live gigs as a part of your
definitely.
lives?
I think so. I think we've managed to do quite a few online gigs, and we've kind of got into the flow of that. And you know, even here today, we've got a lot of guests that are watching and watching you as well. So we've kind of found a different audience, but yeah, we've done no live gigs at all. So it's quite a strange thing. I think we kind of missed the travel, but we kind of enjoyed being at home as well because we spend our lives traveling. So.
Yeah.
But I don't know how long that's going to last for in terms of our enjoyment of being at home.
Well,
We'll see.
Nicola, we thought we'd play you a song we haven't played very much actually. It's inspired by the cheerily titled Capital Punishment by Robert Wilson, and it's the song we've written is like in honour of the henchman in the book, who's a little bit agoraphobic and just kind of likes the quiet life, really. And the song is called "Thank God I'm Not a Rich Man." I'm living under the radar, my life is grounded. I've nothing to desire or be manipulated. Thank God I'm not a rich man and I'll never have money. I haven't got connections or a great body. So I'm told it's a dark world out there. I never want to be kidnapped, it'd be hardest on my friends. They'd have to find a ransom and then it gets complicated. Thank God I'm not a rich man, I'm a manual labourer. No holidays to Rio, but I'm safe in Superman. So I'm told it's a dark world out there. So let's drop this body into the water now. I wonder if it floats forever. So let's drop this body into the water now. I wonder if it floats forever.
Great. Nicely gothic.
Well, we do our best. Thank you, Nicola. So moving on to our final guest of this morning's show, the wonderful Polly Pullett. Thank you so much for joining us.
No,
and
for having me.
lovely
Lovely.
to see you.
And you.
Whereabouts are you tuning in from, Polly?
I'm still in Aberfeldy, so heading down to Wigtown on Friday, which is great. So I'm only going to have 2 days in Wigtown, but it's an awful lot better than no days in Wigtown. So I know it's going to be quiet, but I look forward to seeing a few kindred souls walking about. So, and hopefully you.
Yeah, we'd love to see you. Yes.
Yeah, I want to see
Absolutely.
Molly anyway and see how she's doing. So I imagine
She's big.
huge.
Big in a small way, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
still petite, but grown a lot since you last saw her.
Yeah,
I
this is our
do like
3-year-old
your
daughter.
fox shirt, Ben. I hope you wore that shirt in my honour.
I absolutely did, Polly. I was going through all my shirts, and there was only one I could wear this morning for you because
I noticed
What's your necklace there? Is that a
Oh,
fox?
it's
When we
actually
first met Polly, Polly is covered in fox memorabilia, little badges and all sorts.
somebody said to me when they came into the house the other day, they said, "Gosh, you really like animals, don't you?" That's slightly
No.
understatement. Never mind.
Did they know who you were?
No,
This is
they hadn't
Polly.
a clue.
No. So Polly, this whole period, I mean, everyone has talked and had their own experiences of the natural world over this particular time, especially during lockdown. Was that an interesting time for you? I mean, we've
Yeah.
been to where you live, and it is the most beautiful. You've created the most beautiful landscape around yourself, but I guess. So probably that hasn't changed, but have you noticed a difference even in that wonderful wild space over this
Yes,
time?
I have. And as Nicola was saying, I mean, I started the lockdown period and I had a book to do, which is due to be finished, oh dear, today. And it isn't, but Berlin have given me another couple of weeks. I'm hoping when all this is over, I'll get back to it. And people kept saying, you must be writing an enormous amount. And exactly as Nicola said, I was actually doing none of it, but I was out and about more, walking more, and I took far more photographs. And I noticed and saw so many more things close to home, particularly wildflowers. I really got my head into the flowers and the bees and insects and beetles and small things just on the doorstep, really, round walking. And I don't know why we were all so anxious. But the other thing that happened for us with lockdown is that we got swamped with injured wildlife and orphan wildlife. So we had more barn owls than we've had for many years. We had lots of baby barn owls. And I'm now sort of swamped with tiny baby hedgehogs. And I also found another red deer calf just above the farm in Dire Straits at the beginning of June. So in fact, if anybody has kept me writing my book, it's been my red deer calf, because I don't know if you've seen the picture that I put on Twitter, but she sits under my desk, which I've moved to the shed because deer like to be in close contact with you. And as I'm her surrogate mother, she and I actually really love being with her. So it's been a very strange time. But yes, to answer your question, I think we have noticed a lot of different things. It isn't that they weren't there before. I think it's just that I haven't been gallivanting around in all the talks and festival events and things. Everything was cancelled. So, from having a full diary, we all had nothing, which was extraordinary. Wonderful,
It sounds
but
like you were very, very busy with all these animals, and have because when we came to see you, you had some baby red squirrels. How did they, after we saw you, did they make it back out into
well,
the wild?
we released them, and they continued to come as far as we know for several months. But of course, as they began to molt out into their winter coats and grow up fully, it was really difficult to see who was who. And we're mixing with the wild squirrels. So we hope, certainly for the first 2 months, we were seeing them most days. They came for sort of dinner and breakfast. They didn't come for the bed, but they just dipped in to get pieces of melon and exotic things. It cost me an absolute fortune. I just daren't do any maths on how much these animals cost. It's just
my memory of staying at yours is that we were both up in the night. I was feeding Molly and you were feeding your squirrels every 3 hours.
Well, I've been doing that. In fact, this week is the first time I haven't had to get up in the night to feed things, and it's been like that since June. And I must admit, I get so knackered. You do get knackered. Always, and you're poking syringes of milk down unwilling mouths at the small hours, and then some of them die, which is a bit disheartening. But we have had some red squirrels this year. I've got 2 still with us at the moment who are going to be here for the winter. And they are just absolutely delightful, but they haven't been helping me write the book about squirrels. They're a bit too random.
When I worked in Kenya with as a filmmaker called Joan Root out there, and she lived on the shores of Lake Naivasha, and she would also be the person who people would bring injured animals to look after. And when I went to visit her, must have been about 80 or something, and it was quite extraordinary. She had her few animals that she was actively caring for, but she also had all the animals that she'd previously cared for, which were now wild, and they would literally drop in. So we had this crown crane, literally while I was talking to her walking the garden, it flew down and landed between Joan and I, and it's about as high as you or I, and this enormous bird just sort of almost putting its wing around Joan, and then there'd be there was a hippopotamus that used to come out of the lake, and obviously hippopotamus is an incredibly dangerous and scary animal, but it had been raised by Joan many moons ago, and it would just come out, and Joan would kind of pat it, and it would go back in. And do you find animals that you've released back into the wild do come back to sort of say hi?
They do. Yeah, I mean, we have tawny owls that come back, and they breed in the chimney next to the old bothy next to the house. They had 4 owlets again this year. So yes, they do, and they come in every night for food. So I put we sort of have a free takeaway, and we put the food out, and we just hope the neighbours' cats don't get there first. And we've had pine martins coming in this summer and stealing some of the owl food too, which has been quite entertaining. And I've never hand reared any badgers since I've lived here, but they come into the garden too, and they do a huge amount of rearranging the flower beds. And
that's nice of them.
Yeah, but I'm very happy because we have a very wild garden, and I'm not precious about it. And the more nature that comes into my garden, the happier I am. But people come and they say, "Gosh, are you going to cut your grass?" You know, we just leave everything pretty wild now.
And I think that's great, and it should,
yeah.
That's how it should be, shouldn't it? For attracting all the birds and the bees and everything. I think we're learning more that wild is best, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I think it's really hard to get out of that mindset of endless grass cutting. And when you think about it, it's quite strange. You know, it costs you a fortune. It takes a lot of time. It gets rid of all the lovely wildflowers. But we all seem to be obsessed with tidiness, aren't we? I mean,
it's crazy. I'm desperately trying to convince Beth for that reason to get an astroturf in our garden instead of a lawn.
We have
no
grass.
I think you'd agree with me.
I'll never speak to you again if you get an astroturf lawn. It's the most horrible thing.
But otherwise, just mowing. Anyway.
It's a very small patch that we'd get grass in because our garden isn't very big, so it would be
I literally will hold you to that. I shall come and ruin your astroturf. It's the most horrible thing for insects.
Yeah, I'm with you, Polly.
I was, of course, kidding.
I know you were.
Anyway.
And so was I. But I won't be doing an astroturf at all.
And Polly, so you're doing some events this weekend at the Wigtown Book Festival, is that right?
Yeah, yes, I am. I'm doing one with the lovely Kate Humble on Friday, and then I'm doing one with Anne Lingard, and that's very interesting for you, Colin, because she's just done this amazing book on the Solway. I'm halfway through it. It's absolutely intriguing, but funnily enough, at 5 o'clock this morning, because I have terrible insomnia, I was reading the bit that she wrote about scallop dredging and about cucumber. So I was really interested. I'm going to have a look at your photographs. And actually, I think that will a very tie-up. Yeah. You and she should get together too. Do you know her?
I know her through social media, but I just bought her book. I think it just came out about 4 or 5 weeks ago, did it, Polly? So I'm one chapter into it, but yeah, it's very
so
interesting
I've got that
so far.
And of course, there will be walking Charlie Court, who the others know, but Nicola, if you don't know, he's a very, very nice little terrier who owned by the people who have the bed and breakfast. In fact, I think that he owns them actually. And he's a very square, comfortable figure. I think it's because probably quite a lot of people in Wigtown give him the odd little treat. But he's so delightful. Yeah. Really one of the main reasons we're coming now.
Absolutely. And Polly, could you tell us a tiny bit about the book you're writing, or is that top secret?
Not at all, no. It's for Berlin, and it's called A Scurry of Squirrels. I think the subtitle's going to be Nurturing the Wild, but subtitles are dodgy, so I am really nearly finished it. At least I'm saying that now in case anybody from Berlin's listening. And it's really it's a journey with squirrels, but there's a lot of natural history, a lot of history, tiny bit of folklore. There's not a lot of folklore associated with squirrels, not that I could find. And then lots of sort of stories of hand rearing them and problems and issues and various things. I hope it's a positive book. It's quite a lot about habitat restoration as well. But I have also just finished a memoir, which is a slightly bigger project in that it's with an agent who I hope will find a publisher for it. But I've never had a book before that I've been asked to write before without a publisher up front, so it may never see the light of day. But anyway, in some ways I'm excited about it, in some ways I'm worried about it.
Oh no! Well, that means it's good. That means it's you know that it needs to go out into the world. So
well, we'll see. It may never do, but anyway, I suppose it's something that had to be written, so for my own.
Can we have a copy anyway?
Yes, you can have a copy anyway. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh,
So when you're coming up to see us again, you're not going to be able to move for a bit.
no, not for a while. Hence all our wood purchasing. But
We would love to though, and I was thinking
know.
about how when the person that came in your house and said about liking animals, I just remember Molly spotting all the secret little hidden animals in your house, just on pottery or on the wall or a picture or something. And
but it also
go,
hidden
where? And
places.
she went,
I
there it
remember
is.
like a banister carved as an owl or something like that. Or just there's kind of things you wouldn't expect in certain places,
Yeah.
which is really really lovely. I mean, certainly wilding your own house, Polly, with beautiful pictures and.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always loved animals. They're really wonderful. I think it was Dr. Dolittle that started it. Hugh Lofting's amazing books that I read as a child, and Bill Potter, of course. Those two are just absolutely. And then James Herriot. Those three are just the most amazing authors.
I know my grandmother was good friends with Gerald Durrell.
Oh wow! How lovely.
As well, and had a few stories that are not necessarily appropriate for the breakfast show. Anyway, we're going to move on to round up. We're going to round up.
Joan Root was amazing. I mean, Joan Root, to have met Joan Root is just incredible. I'm incredibly envious. Thank you anyway.
Yeah, she was a wonderful lady. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We are going to play you out with a song that we felt was very appropriate to play for Polly. For her love of animals and particularly foxes as well.
You.
And so we have a song inspired by this book here called Glow by Ned Bowman, but most importantly for now it has a wonderful psychedelic fox on the front, and we thought that would be appropriate. And this song, a little bit like the animals you were describing, this song is imagining foxes of a city coming and providing what they believe to be a truly wonderful and positive service for everybody, which is to tear open bags of rubbish and scatter the contents all over the road for free to make you happy, and then they'll be gone again. So we will play this for you, Polly. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Did I tune this?
No.
Probably. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. We are the foxes working around the town. We are the foxes working for you. Bring out your boxes before you settle down. We are the foxes working for you. Don't be afraid, cause you know what we prefer. A smile on your faces, that's what we do. Don't need to pay us, we're happy in our work. We are the foxes working for you. Running rings round covers more than foxes in a big rush, jumping on a nightmares. City lights go like a light show, keeping strange hours, smelling all the flowers. We're keeping strange hours, smelling all the flowers. We're keeping strange hours, smelling all the flowers. Do-do-do. 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 And in the morning when all our work is done, shifts are changing and you'll be up soon. We'll hear you coming, then we'll be on our way. We are the foxes working for you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for everyone for tuning in. So you can find links. We'll contact the festival bookshop to get hold of the books of Polly or Nicola, and do check out online on the website as well for access to Colin's wonderful videos and also his exhibition. There's donation links for the Wigtown Book Festival. There's shop links to our CDs, and but we will see you again tomorrow morning. But have a wonderful rest of day. Do check out all the rest of the events happening today at the festival. But until tomorrow, and thank you so much to all our authors for joining us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh,
Have a
thank
wonderful
you.
day.
Oh.
And,
Lovely to see you.
See you
see you
soon.
all tomorrow morning. I need to
Bye.
go over, and somewhere over here are some awesome credits. Here we go. Bye.
Bye.